All right. Call this Monday, July 13th, 2026 session of North Augusta Council study session in order. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to City Admin to move us through the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council members. As is the usual practice, we will do an agenda review for next week's council meeting. You'll have department details from the department heads, and then we'll have one item under Mayor's Matters for focus items, and that'll be this year's financial audit. So this will be an opportunity for the council to do a full review of the finances for the last fiscal year. And we'll be able to close out effectively that way. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into the agenda review. We have a number of items here for old business. Most of these are in the planning or in the tourism side of the house. So first, under planning and development, under old business, ordinance number 2026-13, change the corporate limits of the city of North Augusta by accepting the petition requesting annexation by the landowners and annexing plus or minus 0.16 acres of property located off Lake Greenwood Drive and owned by the Lakes LLC. Second reading, obviously I have Tom Paradise here to answer. This has already been voted on once, and just as a reminder for council members and for the folks that are watching from home, this is in regards to a piece of property that has a very small piece of roadway that's connecting for the new development that's going in, that's in the city limits of North Augusta at Lakes and Streams. So the road is going to be built regardless. The question is, does that road come into the city or not come into the city? And so the council has already previously voted once to allow that annexation, and this would be the second reading of that ordinance. But if you have any specific planning and development questions regarding this item, Mr. Paradise is here to be able to handle those questions. Hearing no questions, we'll move on to the next items. These are actually linked, even though they're listed separately under administration and tourism. So the first item is item 8, ordinance number 2026-15, amending Article 15, sections 2-286 through 2-290 of the Code of Ordinances to reclassify the position of tourism manager as tourism director. Second reading, again, what we're doing is, and the reason why these are linked is because we're moving the Greenway team 3-person element from Parks and Rec into tourism, and based on the scope of responsibility and financial aspects that are along with that, we felt, along with the mayor, that it was time to elevate the position of the tourism manager to tourism director, so it's a peer with all the other directors that are outward facing. And so ultimately, that's what's before you, is to change that position in the ordinance itself. And then I'll move, if you don't mind, collectively, so we can talk those together. Ordinance number 2026-16, authorizing a restructuring of the tourism department to incorporate Greenway operations, staff, facilities, and programs for second reading. So again, these are both second readings. The council heard both through study sessions and also in the city council meeting itself that the tourism department would then elevate to a department and then would incorporate elements of Parks and Rec, specifically the Greenway team, to move over to tourism. And we've already started to get the ball rolling as far as moving some of the Greenway items out over into the old public safety headquarters in the Bay areas. We are not allowing people to operate in the office spaces at the old public safety headquarters just based on the environmentals there. But as far as storing Greenway equipment, the bays are sufficient for that purpose. Again, we view that as an interim plan. We had a discussion at the Greenwood offsite talking about capital project sales tax 4 and having a wedge for the Greenway for that action. Part of that would go towards paving the Greenway in a future year, but also part of that proposal would be eventually to replace the old Johnson & Johnson electric facility, to have that raised and then put a smaller facility there that would incorporate the Greenway storage and likely a restroom facility. So those are the actions that are before you for second reading, both of those involving tourism, but listed separately, one under administration, one under tourism. JD is certainly able to answer most of your questions, or would Carl, but I'll pause for any questions from the council on these items.
Just one really quick from me. Did we ever get an opinion on whether or not this action would separate the Greenway from Parks and Rec funding, like impact fees?
So Kelly, the question that had been asked previously was by the fact that this would be moved out, the tourism department with the Greenway assets, would that affect the usage of impact fees, because impact fees are specifically used for parks, the way that it was written, and that was the question. And my response, I believe, to the councilman was, impact fees cannot be used to take care of existing facilities. So, for example, I cannot use impact fees to repave portions of the greenway. But my understanding at the administration level was that if we're doing a change or update to that facility, for example, we were going to extend the greenway into a neighborhood or go somewhere else, that would be eligible for impact fee funding. And that was my read of it.
I would be of the opinion that if it relates to the same activity, the same scope of work, that we'd still be all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. One is, I think the Greenway is probably underestimated in how much tourism it brings to the community. Carl, you might be able to speak on how many different groups use or rent the Greenway for races or for other kinds of events throughout the year. It's probably a number that would surprise some of our council members. So moving the Greenway under the tourism department makes sense. I think there could also be a case for a lot of other areas in the city. There's so much overlap with softball fields, soccer fields for tourism that already occurred, basketball gyms, and just about almost all of our parks and rec facilities. But how many events would you say a year are people that rent the Greenway for a race or for some other event? Blood walk.
I'm sorry, Carl, if you're going to speak, please come to the mic.
Yeah, so I've been out of coordinating races and all that for a while, since tourism became a thing. But I know when I was doing it, there's probably at least 12 to 15, 5Ks that go on, and obviously the Ironman and the one in November, the Peach, Palmetto Peach, obviously is a big draw and filling up hotels as well. But it also, serves a lot of 5Ks within communities. I know Augusta University is one, their dental department. Their residents always do one. And
is there a blood drive walk or a heart walk, or there's a
Heart Walk has been
very big.
Has been in our town for a number of years, probably close to 12, 15 years now. Been doing it, and that's a good regional draw as well. It is. Yes, sir.
Very good.
All right, barring any other questions, we'll move on to new business. Under administration, resolution number 2026-37, authorizing revised request of award allocation of the accommodations tax advisory committee for the disbursement of revenues from the accommodations tax year 2023-24 accommodation tax funding program. I'm going to probably punt it over to Jamie, since she's one of our ATAX experts, and if that flows off of there, then Linda can certainly handle it as well. But I'll turn over you to tell the council what they're doing, or asked to do.
Good evening. For the resolution that is in front of you, the accommodation tax had asked for an extension, and with that, the recommendation for the change is due to some monies that were then not expected to be covered, were covered, so they came up with, because the money needs to be spent by the end of the year, and they did not want to lose it. Any other questions? I'm here.
Yeah, I believe the project is the water wheel that's down there. They want to invest some money in the water wheel, which is an outstanding feature of the Living History Park, if you've ever seen it work. And it actually works the grist mill as well. And they had some labor donated to move the water wheel as well as put it back in, but they needed some additional money to repair. Yeah, excellent choice.
Barring any other comments, they'll also be under boards and commissions, Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission and Planning Commission appointments by the mayor, receipt of information by the council. So the mayor will be making a new appointment to the Parks and Rec Commission because I believe one of the members is coming off. So that, subject to any questions, that's what we have for the agenda review for next week. And we'll go ahead and move into department details.
Good evening again. First up is Finance Director Linda Williamson.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. Just a quick update from Finance. Our Cycle 1 customers are scheduled, their disconnection date will be, for their June balances will be Tuesday, July 21st. The due date for their July 10th bills is going to be August 3rd. Cycle 2 customers will have a due date for their June 26 bills on July 20th, and the disconnection date for their June balances is scheduled to begin Tuesday, August 4th. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, and then for human resources, for the week of July 13th, there's 2 new hires she had listed and, or stated, and on the back of your page is employment opportunities.
Hold on. Can I ask, have we hired somebody, the assistant at the animal shelter?
Chief's going to talk about that because it's under his
Okay,
portfolio.
Okay.
Okay, then next up is Engineering Public Works Director Tom Caesar.
Good evening. I'm pleased to state that all the work under the NRCS grant all the physical work is completed, our contractors, and so now we are just wrapping up and preparing what we call our closeout documents to submit to NRCS. And so hopefully bring that grant project to a conclusion by the end of August. And I'm sure there'll be a full accounting of that grant at some time in the future, once that's wrapped up. Also this week, Dominion Energy will be working in the median on Center Street in Riverside Village to do their portion of the work to bring permanent electric power into the median there. That will supply electricity to the tree lights and as well as other receptacles that are down there. We've been borrowing electricity from the Crown Plaza with their permission, of course, for quite some time, so we will have that service in place soon. The contractor working in the Woodlawn Crestview ditch or drainage project, he should finish all concrete work this week. And then so it's just a matter of property restoration. And so again, hopefully that work will be substantially complete by his contract end date of July 31st. And then lastly, the Creighton Park contractor doing the site work, the parking lot and other improvements down there. Will be putting in the parking surface this week or beginning that work. And then again, he fully expects to have that work substantially complete also July 31st.
Is the parking lot surface permeable?
Yes, it is a
It is.
pervious, it's a gravel-based pervious system, yes.
Very good.
Thank you, Tom. Next up is Planning and Development Director Tommy Paradise.
Good evening. The Planning Commission is Wednesday evening. We have issued the RFP for the comprehensive plan. Those should be received by noon on July the 30th, and then we'll start evaluations. The Arts MPO Governing Document Committee that I serve on will be meeting July the 15th. That's Wednesday afternoon as well. The Arts MPO Policy Committee meets the next morning on July the 16th. Our code enforcement in the last couple of weeks has opened 17 new cases, closed 11. One lot was cleaned, and that will be that will go on as a tax lien to the property owner. We're currently receiving bids on 5 additional parcels that we need to clean. We removed 46 illegal signs and did 13 landscape inspections. Questions?
Thank you, Tommy.
Next up is Public Services Director James Sutton.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This week, 700 block of River Bluff Road will be reduced to 1 lane of traffic on Wednesday, the 15th, during the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. And also on Friday, the 17th, from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. so that utility crews can work out in the street and the roadway to make a wastewater service connection, extend it over to a new residential lot, and they'll also make repairs to the roadway. Also this week, utility technicians will be working between San Salvador, over around Hammond Hills, between San Salvador and Hammond's Ferry Road, along the 1.1 mile walking trail. They're going to be conducting inspections and cleaning of the wastewater main. As soon as they finish doing the cleaning, it'll be evaluated, the condition of the pipe in the office, and ranked, evaluated, and any of the problems that we have out there will be scheduled to make repairs. No problems, everything will move forward. We'll list it and put it in the asset management program file. It'll also help us determine how frequent the pipe needs to be cleaned, or if it needs to be replaced or portion thereof.
Thank you, James.
Next up is Public Safety, Chief Johnson.
To answer your question you started with, our new animal control assistant is supposed to start on July 29th is when that person will start out there. And also this past weekend, we had 12 of our members attend the National Fire Academy for a weekend, the South Carolina weekend training course in Emmitsburg, Maryland. So it's going to be very similar to a 8 to 5 schedule, but we're setting it up so that the weekends will also have coverage. That way we can expand the amount of time. That's right. Yes, ma'am. We can't expect them to work all 7 days, but between them and Craig, we want to be able to have someone there 7 days. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Chief.
Next up is Park.
Council members, if you wouldn't mind, just a reminder that please use your microphones. We've had a number of complaints from citizens that watch the live stream and can't hear.
Oh, they heard him. They heard his answer. I didn't say that.
Okay, Parks and Recreation Director Rick Meyer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last week, we hosted over 200 junior EYBL teams, and during the tournament, we had a medical emergency on Friday, and I am so thankful to report that the gentleman has survived and will be okay, and it's a big thanks to the effort of PSO Christopher Morehouse, 2 certified athletic trainers, Trish Leslie and Jessica Coleman. They were quick to respond to the incident to save this gentleman's life. He's from Texas. And I might also add that the Activity Center AED in the front office was also utilized in the save. So we're thankful to report that tonight. This week, the Activity Center will host the 30th annual Nike Peach Jam Tuesday through Sunday. And the last thing I have for you tonight is the City of North Augusta has been awarded a $100,000 Recreation Trails Program grant for the Palmetto Parkway Trailhead. This grant will provide funding for a parking area, ADA accessible path to the trail, a shelter, benches, and trail signage.
It's exciting.
Yes, I hand that one off, a gift to tourism as we turn that greenway over to them. Thank y'all.
Well, wait, Rick,
Yes.
was that the one, we applied a year
Before.
or so ago? And
Yes.
it got turned down, so this is it back?
Yes, we
Thank
reapplied and
you
got
for
it.
Suing on.
Yes,
Good deal. Thank you, Rick.
thank you.
And to close out department details is Tourism Manager Carl Waldhauer.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Explore North Augusta is going to host the Amazing Race event this Saturday. We had 17 teams register. It's our trial run, so we're thinking plus or minus 4 hours for that event, but we'll see. Hopefully we didn't make the clues too hard and we're out there all day. We are going to cut it off at some point, though, and text them and tell them to come on in. The Chamber of Commerce will host their next power lunch at Community Center on Tuesday, July 28th at 11:30. Mayor Williams, along with leaders from SRS, Aiken Regional, and Fort Gordon, will be speaking on trends in the CSRA. And tickets are still available for that Chamber website. I just want to share a few mid-year stats from the Explore North Augusta website and social media. Our website's had over 13,000 visitors since January and appeared in over 27,000 searches. Our Facebook account has had over 56,000 viewers and 242,000 views since January. We've gained right at 2,000 followers since this time last summer. And the ENA app has been downloaded over 3,900 times since we onboarded last fall.
Thanks, Carl.
With that, that concludes department details. I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Clifford.
I'm actually going to have Linda Williamson come up and introduce our guest speaker, and I'm excited to be able to present the audit results for our budget. This is really the standard that we wish to achieve, where we're talking about the previous year's budget here by July. And so that keeps us all on the straight and narrow on making sure that you will have some accountability for the general fund and other budgets that we are required to manage.
Evening again. Yes, and just as we talked about last time, our financial audit was completed last month. It is up on the city's Facebook page. So for anyone that is interested in going to that, it is under the government tab. And if you'll scroll down, it's under transparency and performance. And then
So not under the Facebook page, but on the web page.
On the web page. Under transparency and performance, and there's a button to click, and then under financial transparency, then there's a financial report. So that's where you can find that particular audit report. Under the financial transparency is the budget and all those kinds of reports too. But the financial reports has the comprehensive financial audit. And with us tonight to share the results of our 2025 audit is Grant Davis from Malden and Jenkins. And I know most of you have seen him before. He's been with us for quite a few years. So I'll turn it over to him.
Well, members of council, thank you all for having me to go over the results of our audit for the calendar year ended 2025. As you can see, I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation to try to summarize everything that you'll ultimately find in the annual comprehensive financial report itself. I think you may have hard copies here in front of you. I'm just going to go through the presentation here in and of itself, but I want to mention a couple of things about the physical copies of the documents that you have. One, as I mentioned a moment ago, the annual comprehensive financial report is the result of the whole process. So that's your financial statements with our audit opinion included. And I'll talk about these reports in more detail in just a moment, but you'll ultimately find 3 reports with our letterhead on it within that document. And again, I'll explain what those are. But in addition to the annual comprehensive financial report, the acronym for that is called the ACFR. Just for the sake of saying fewer words, I'm going to refer to it as the ACFR from now on. But in addition to that, we've issued another document that's about 25, 30 pages long. We call it our auditor's discussion and analysis document. And the purpose of that document is to communicate to you all some things that we are required by our professional standards to communicate at the conclusion of our audit. A number of those required communications I have on the slides. It's not completely comprehensive, but I'm going to mention the ones that I think are of most importance, and anything that I leave out just simply means that I don't think it's of super importance for you all to know here tonight. But again, all those required communications are memorialized in that auditor's discussion and analysis document. In addition, if you happen to look at it, in addition to that, just to give you kind of a format, at the very beginning of that document, it's just some information about our firm, our governmental practice, how we spend our time professionally. And then right after that, you get into some really high-level financial analysis. Some of the charts that you'll see throughout that auditor's discussion and analysis document I have here, and I'll refer to those. Just some things that I thought would be helpful as you read a document that's as long as the annual comprehensive financial report itself really is. So just to, again, to try to summarize those things. And then you get into the required communications, and at the very end, there's some information about new accounting standards that are on the horizon. It seems like every year we have to adopt 2 or 3 new accounting standards. And so that, again, there's some information about those in that document. But at this point, I'm just going to jump into the slides. And I've kind of gone through our agenda at this point. But on the next slide, my intention is certainly not to read all this to you, but just to show you a little bit about our firm, our governmental practice. I'm a governmental auditor. That's all I do. I don't even do my own tax return. So I can talk to you about GASB and single audits and governmental stuff, but I can't help anybody out on income tax questions. I have to have other people even help me with that. So again, just a little information about our governmental practice, but just beyond that is really what you care about, and it's the results of our 2025 audit. And I mentioned a moment ago that we've issued 3 reports in the Act for itself. The first report is at the very beginning of the document, right after the introductory section, so probably 10, 15 pages in. We've ultimately issued an unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements, and unmodified is not glamorous language, but it's really the only acceptable result from your perspective in a financial statement audit. So in it, that report, that opinion goes on for about 4 pages, talks about management's responsibilities for the financial statements, our responsibilities as auditors, different elements that comprise the ACFR and what assurance, if any, we've provided on those different elements. Talks about the auditing standards that we followed. There are 2 acronyms, GAS and GAS, I guess is a way to say that. So GAS is Government Auditing Standards. GAS is Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. So both of those are required, and we ultimately applied those in our audit. The second of 3 reports is at the very back of the document. So there's a section at the very back of the document that's called the compliance section. There are 2 reports there. So reports 2 and 3 are in the compliance section. The second of 3 reports is a report on internal controls and compliance over financial reporting in accordance with government auditing standards. That report is not designed or intended to provide an opinion, but to say as a part of ultimately planning and performing our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards, if we become aware of any deficiencies in internal controls or instances of noncompliance that are material to the financial statements of the city as a whole, we are required to communicate those to you all. And so we call this negative assurance. But ultimately, it's another clean opinion, or it's not an opinion, clean report, in that we've not identified any internal control deficiencies that could be characterized as a material weakness or a significant deficiency in internal controls, and we've also not identified any instances of noncompliance. And that noncompliance could be with laws, regulations, grant agreements, bond ordinances, things of that nature, all really financial elements. So again, no noncompliance, no internal control deficiencies identified. So another clean report ultimately. The third and final report, again, you can find it in the compliance section. We'll go to the next slide, is what we call a single audit report. So you may or may not be aware, but in any given year, if an entity ultimately expends, and the important word here is expend, it doesn't have anything to do with when you receive the money, it's when you spend the money. You would think you'd have to receive it to spend it, but that's not always the case. In any event, when you spend in excess of $1 million, that its original source was at the federal government level. So even if it went from some federal department to the state of South Carolina, ultimately here to North Augusta, if the source is originally federal, it triggers this compliance audit. And so the city ultimately expended in excess of $1 million during 2025 under a variety of federal grant programs, and that triggered a compliance audit, or what we call a single audit. We have issued an opinion, which you'll see there in that third and final report, on compliance with the federal requirements surrounding the one major program that we audited. And we audited the Coronavirus State and Fiscal Recovery Funds program. You may be more familiar with it. Some people called it ARPA. That was the original legislation at the federal level that created it. But that program was about $5.8 million of your total. We audited that major program for federal compliance and have issued an unmodified or clean opinion on compliance as it relates to that federal program. And ultimately what that means is we did not identify any internal control deficiencies associated with the federal requirements around the use of those monies. And we, again, didn't identify any specific instances of noncompliance relative to that program. So beyond that, I mentioned at the very beginning some required communications. You can find these in that auditor's discussion and analysis document. I'm not going to read all this verbatim to you, but just to mention a few things. I've already said the city has to implement new accounting standards, 2 or 3, it seems like, every year. 2025 was sort of an easy year in that we just had to implement one new standard. It was this GASB Statement 102. Ultimately, that standard did not have an impact in any way to the city's financials, the ACFR. So very easy to implement this year. The financial statements themselves include a variety of judgments and estimates, and our job as it relates to those judgments and estimates is to evaluate what we call the inputs and the outputs. So both from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective to evaluate management's estimates. And those estimates are things like the useful life of a capital asset, the collectability of certain receivables, things of that nature. And ultimately, we did not have any disagreements with management's estimates relative to those more significant items. On the next slide, the footnotes, what we call here the disclosures, just seem like they go on and on and on and on forever. That makes up what seems like the bulk of the document itself. Those are subject to audit. So we've audited those disclosures in addition to the numbers in the financial statements themselves. We had full cooperation from the city's management and staff. We didn't have any disagreements with management. I would say if we had, you'd probably already know about it. I don't think that would be news at this moment. But that's always a positive thing that I do like to highlight. And again, just a great working relationship throughout the audit. We received representations from management as it relates to the completeness, the accuracy of the information that was provided to us to ultimately conduct the city's audit. On the next slide, I'll just mention one thing at the very bottom here. We're independent as is required by our professional standards of the city of North Augusta. If we weren't independent, we couldn't do your audit. Just after that's basically the required communications. The next couple slides are just some really, really high level financial analysis. And again, if I had to put myself in your shoes and look at a document that's approaching 200 pages, if not maybe a little bit longer, what would matter to me if I really wanted a high level view? And this is what I've tried to do. So this first slide is, again, this is balance sheet right here at December 31st, 2025. And I've just picked out more significant elements. If you try to add up my subtotals, you won't get to the totals. I've just, again, selected a few things to highlight, but you can see total assets. This is all funds, all activities of the city wrapped up together. 320 million in total assets, and you can see capital assets make up the vast majority of that total. And those capital assets are things like buildings, infrastructure, vehicles, all reported net of accumulated depreciation. Then you get your liabilities at close to $120 million. I've just mentioned here the pension liability. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds on pensions. I could talk about pensions for hours. But this is the state's pension plan that the city's required to participate in. This is the city's share of the state's pension plan. It's basically that $25 million figure. And it varies from year to year for a variety of reasons that the city has no control over. And then liabilities in the form of bonds and notes. So these are long-term liabilities, typically to finance infrastructure or the acquisition of vehicles at $83 million. This gives you net position, which in our world, that's equity, of $202 million. It's broken down in three components, as I've listed here. The net investment in capital assets is what it sounds like. It's the investment that you've made in your capital assets, again, buildings, infrastructure, vehicles, less any debt that was issued to finance those. Is how you get to that figure. And then restricted net position is net position or equity that's been restricted by an external party. So you think about grants, things like that have to be spent for a specific purpose, or things that have been restricted by state law. And then unrestricted at $1 million there to make up the total of net position. The next slide is really just an income statement. The income statement for a government is called the statement of activities, when all funds and activities are combined into one. And it is a bizarre statement to look at. You start at the left and go to the right and then go to the top from the bottom. It's crazy to try to follow, but again, I've tried to summarize it here for you. So total revenues, 74 million. You can see there are a couple of buckets that are larger portions there versus total expenses of 59 million, gives you an increase of $15 million in equity net position. You can think about this change in net position as basically a net income type figure for the year. Again, all funds, all activities together. The next slide is a focus just on the general fund. I promise you we're getting close to the end of my financial highlights here, but the concept is the same. First three large bullets are the balance sheet of the general fund. You can see a little bit of the composition of that. $3.7 million in fund balance. Unassigned is the vast majority of that. Unassigned is basically available for appropriation. So it's about $3.6 million. And then the income statement here below revenues, expenses, change in fund balance. The reason those figures don't net exactly to a $1 million decrease is there are some additional items, transfers between funds, things of that nature, that just for the sake of not blowing you away with lots of numbers, I excluded here. But again, you can see kind of the highlights there. After this, the next couple of slides are just some charts. Again, these are all in that auditor's discussion and analysis document. This is just a composition of revenues in the general fund. You can see what makes up the bulk of your revenues. The concept is exactly the same on the next slide. This is what makes up your expenditures by what we call functional area. So general government, you think about administration, finance, HR, those being in general government. Public safety is what it sounds like, so forth and so on. I think I've only got two more in here. This is just historical, basically ins and outs of the general fund. Blue is in, red is out. How that's basically shown up over time. And then the next and final chart, I hope, that I've put in here for you all is just to look at how the general fund's fund balance has changed since 21. So again, just some historical information to see how things have moved. But after that, the last couple things I have here for you tonight, I mentioned in the auditor's discussion analysis, and it may seem a little bit irrelevant to you all to talk about accounting standards, but I do always like to mention that there are new things coming on the horizon. It's helpful when you're looking at your financial statements themselves, I think, to be aware of what changes have occurred and what changes are expected to occur going forward. So there's some brief information about new accounting standards for 26, the year that you're in now. And other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, if you may have any. And before I say that, let me just say one more thing. I just want to thank the finance management and staff and their hard work in getting us in. You know, we started, just to give you an idea of time frames, we started the audit in February, and that's really early to be able to close your year end and have us basically in before, I guess maybe say 45 days after your year end. And to have us here and presenting on time certainly is something that's important as well. So I just want to thank all of those folks for their efforts in helping get us in and out and ultimately having a good report to bring back to you all.
So I'd also just like to state for the council, as you're going to ask some financial questions, I'm sure, what has been presented here on these slides is specifically the general fund. And when you get your budget book, that consists of many different funds. That includes the capital projects fund, that includes capital project sales tax balances on both 4 and 5. It's going to affect other funds that are out there, Riverfront Central Core among those. So when you see things up here on a pie chart that show like, hey, the public works wedge in red there is a pretty small portion. When you look at it from the perspective of you wrap that into utilities as well, of what the city council previously approved for RIA grant funding and ARPA funding into major projects, that wedge looks completely different. So when you think about the general fund, you're really thinking about the daily operations of the city, not big swing large projects that you may direct from the dais. So just as you look at this general fund balance and the audit that is associated with that, again, just recognize this is one of many funds that you have authorities over, but this is the one that most taxpayers are the most familiar with because this is where their property taxes go. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mayor Pro Tem and Council for specific questions about anything in the presentation that either our auditors or finance department could answer for you today.
I have a quick one. So I'm not an accountant. So this comes from a non-accounting statement. So the summary that you provided us on page 9, where it has the general fund revenues, expenditures, and transfers. So the last 2 years, we've had more expenditures than revenue. In fact, 3 of the last 4 years, we've had more expenditures than revenue. It was on one of the slides as well, I think a couple of slides.
This is what you're looking at?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, sir. This is just inflows and outflows of the general fund and the general fund alone. Like I said, blue is both revenues, and we make a distinction between certain transactions that are inflows that we call other financing sources, and then certain outflows that are called other financing uses. It may be a little bit more complex than it needs to be, but there is that distinction in governmental accounting. So those those other financing sources are typically transfers between funds. If you issue debt, strangely enough, in the governmental world, under the modified accrual basis of accounting, you don't record the debt as a liability. In the general fund, you record the proceeds of the debt. Sometimes it's a cash inflow. Again, we could talk, at one evening over a coffee or something about all the intricacies of governmental accounting.
It'll take
but-
more than coffee.
Councilman, maybe I can.
Yeah, right, maybe a beer. But you've got different things in other financing sources. Other financing uses are typically comprised of just transfers out. And so what you have here is not simply a view of revenue versus expenditures, but you could have, and I don't have it in front of me to tell you specifically what comprised each of the amounts, but you could have transfers from the general fund to another fund, a capital projects fund, a utility fund that make up this higher red bar.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind, really, council members, is that we've had expenditures out of the general fund for Hurricane Helene. So ultimately, we've been, over the last 24 months, if you will, almost 24 months, not quite 24 months, have to do expenditures to the debris contractors, to the tree services, to any number of organizations. Sometimes that billing doesn't come right at the moment, but you'll see 2025, we were still paying out a large number of invoices, expenditures that were associated with Helene, and then what happens is we get influx of FEMA money, but there's a gap of time between the time that we have an expenditure for a hurricane-related event and then actually the inflow of replacement funds from FEMA. And Linda's going to give me the head shake that I explained that correctly, or I did not, and I did. All right, so in very simple terms, again, the way I view it as your administrator is you are going to see those downflows, and that's not because we have a higher debt load or because we have other expenditures. It's largely based on the hurricane expenditures, and what you're going to see over the next couple of fiscal years is as we get FEMA reimbursements, those will start to even out.
And perhaps we've heard Hurricane Helene for the last time after the audit. Is that correct?
I doubt it. You're probably going to hear about it again now.
We'll hear it again.
In 26.
No, we have ongoing actions associated with Hurricane Helene to include grants to get generators for some of the facilities. So as we learn some lessons from Hurricane Helene, I think we're going to have some other things that as the FEMA money comes in that we're going to be trying to lay out some options for the city council to better prepare the city for a future weather event that involves being able to have power generation at some of the key facilities.
Yeah, I'll just comment briefly. I know you want to go on to the next thing, but so many of the communities that I serve in this capacity were impacted by Helene and have been by other storms previously. It was obviously a little unique for a hurricane in this part of the state, at least to the extent that it was, but you see the importance of having that unassigned fund balance because you've got to, this is a conversation I've had over and over and over again where you're seeing that you have to float these expenses for sometimes 6 months, sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years before you finally get your reimbursement from the state level and from FEMA. So again, just you see the importance of having that cushion to be able to absorb these things so that when you ultimately do get made as whole as you're going to get, you never get made completely whole in these events, but just to have that ability to float these things because otherwise you're looking at trying to get some kind of financing just to clean up and to operate, which would be less than ideal.
Other questions? Great. Well, thank you, as always. Appreciate the report.
Yeah,
sorry, go over.
just one quick question. So on your financial highlights, you've got intergovernmental listed as a revenue. Can you just kind of explain what intergovernmental is?
Typically grants. There are different interpretations of what constitutes intergovernmental revenue, as I'm sure you can imagine. There are... Without having the detail of that in front of me, it's hard for me to say exactly what constitutes that. But you can typically think of that as, again, grant monies, typically on a reimbursement basis is how most state and federal grants work. There are a few. ARPA was a good example. They advanced the money, and then you had to spend it. And of course, if you didn't spend it by December 31st, I think 25, you had to give it back. But in any event, most grants are reimbursement based, so that's typically in intergovernmental revenues, and there are certain state appropriations to municipalities that are typically included in intergovernmental revenues. Those are the types of things that I think you would anticipate in there. There's not anything otherwise.
Councilman, an example would be the grant that Tom Zizer was talking about, the NRCS grant. You know, that's one where we actually have to do the outlay up front, and then we get reimbursement for the work that's involved. So sometimes, you know, to Arthur's Grant's point about the ARPA money, that was great that all landed lump sum, but the vast majority of grants that we get either are match or in rare cases are 100% reimbursement like the NRCS grant is. But that's an example of intergovernmental transfers. We're going to get some of those funds either out of the state of South Carolina PRT, sometimes U.S. Treasury, EPA, for example. We've got another grant that's coming up that we had the Senator Graham earmark for in the federal budget. That's going to be a stormwater project. That's another example of an intergovernmental transfer that we're going to get at some point in time. $1.29 million for the Greenway stormwater project that we have in the pipeline.
If you want specifics, though, at any point in time, it's easy for us to tell you exactly Linda can too, exactly what comprises that component.
All right. Well, once again, Grant, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the information.
Thank you all.
Thank you to your team for the good job that you guys always do. We appreciate y'all.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that's all I have from the staff this evening.
All right. Well, I have nothing, so I will turn it over to.
I just want to say one thing. Former Councilman Eric Presnell, his daughter Melissa passed away this morning unexpectedly. Sister. And so if everybody Eric is very upset. I mean, because this is so out. But if you'll just please pray for that family. Of course. And his mother's in a nursing home, so it's rough right now.
John?
Well, a tough one to follow from there, but our heart certainly goes out to Eric. I got an email on the city website that maybe some of the other council members got recently about some proposed expenditures for golf cart parking, and the email said that they had just heard that there was this large number of money expenditures were going towards golf cart parking, and I just want to try to clarify with Mr. McCauley or Mr. Clifford that probably not correct. There was a sum of money that we had talked about, some improvements down at Center Street and for the overflow parking for the stadium. And when I look at those numbers that were given to us on the 29th of June in the study session, many of those expenditures, I just don't think it's a fair comparison to say that was $270,000 to park golf carts. And just wanted to make the point that 90,000 of them were just for tree grates. And then another 18,000 of it was to install those tree grates. And $42,000 for bollards. And that really wasn't that much money that was actually designated towards golf cart parking in the stadium effort for what was a small number of people. I just wanted to try to clarify that. How did I do, Mr. McCauley?
Well, first, Councilman, before I turn over to JD, which is just to reiterate to the council, there is no additional funding that's gone into the temporary golf cart parking that's at Parcel D. That's an arrangement we have with the property owner, that's Greenstone. We have rights to that property until such time as he begins construction on that site. So I would anticipate we have that site for at least 12 months. We put up some temporary control measures, barriers or whatnot that we had in the inventory, so there's been no expenditure of city funds. And JD had presented to the city council an option for what Center Street could eventually become with safety measures. And much like we implemented bollards along the sidewalk in front of the Rio Canteen and Brinks Chop House and down to southbound, there's also some pedestrian safety measures that would be prudent there in the center of the area. But ultimately, that's going to be up to the city council to debate whether or not an inclusion of golf cart parking is how you want to do it, or whether you want to make that strictly a pedestrian option. So some of the costs involved are going to be recommended from the staff regardless. If you say, hey, we want to not do golf cart parking in Center Street, we're still going to say, hey, there are some improvements that need to be made to Center Street for the trees and for the health of the trees, along with pedestrian safety actions. And if the city council gives us guidance to prepare that area for golf cart parking, some of those improvements would be specific to the golf carts. Did that answer the question?
Anything? All right. With that, we stand adjourned.